back to Better Commander. Let's revisit some old friends, some commanders we've loved and lost, and take a wistful walk down memory lane. What do you say? Ah, there she is, my old friend, Samut, Voice of Dissent. Samut is a planeswalker from Amonkhet. She specializes in speed-based magic and is a great warrior and protector of her people. So this is 3 red and a green for a legendary creature, human warrior 3/4. She's got flash, she has double strike, vigilance, and haste. Other creatures you control have haste. So you can also pay white and tap Samut, untap another target creature, and she says, "I'll fight no more, just for the honor of dying. The afterlife will have to wait." So there's a lot to digest here. She has flash, which is always handy. These colors don't generally play at instant speed, but if you're holding back mana and she's been sent to the command zone, this may become relevant late game. She also has haste, so you can cast and swing in the same turn. She doesn't intrinsically have any equipment synergy, but I built a budget equipment deck back in the day with her, and it was a pretty awesome deck. So I had a couple tutors back then. We have access to white mana, and tutors like Steel Shaper's Gift and Open the Armory can go get us Hammer of Nazan. Or if you want to get real fancy, there's cards like Enlightened Tutor and Stoneforge Mystic. The cool thing about this deck is that you can kind of treat it like a toolbox. You can go get whatever equipment that you need, usually at instant speed. And cards like Sunforger were awesome in this deck. You also had access to the very best card in the history of Magic, Tajnar Swordsmith, which is a card that most people don't know exists. This card is actually not that great, but I had it in the deck back in the day. You can also make use of equip cost cheaters like Sigarda's Aid and Hammer of Nazan. Hammer of Nazan is 4 for a legendary artifact equipment. Whenever Hammer of Nazan or another equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach that equipment to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has indestructible, and it has an equip cost of 4. This thing was reprinted in Double Masters from Commander 2017 and went down to about $6, and I picked up another copy. Back in the day with Commander 2017, I bought a copy at about $6 as well. The ability to instant equip any equipment you cast can lead to a very surprising turn, and it's great protection for your commander or whatever creature is wearing that equipment. Samut really shines in a creature-based deck that can utilize attack triggers. Cards like Atali Primal Storm, Elder Gargaroth, and Dragon Mage. Dragon Mage is a 5/5 for 7 mana, 5 and 2 red, with flying. Whenever Dragon Mage deals combat damage to a player, each player discards his or her hand and draws 7 cards. This can be very advantageous for us when we empty our hand, and if it swings with haste, more the better. Okay, when you're building a Voltron deck, you don't want the only creature you have to be your commander. You want a bunch of cards that can also act as threats and suck all the equipment onto themselves. This was kind of the first deck I built where I started thinking about that. Cards like Ardenn and Balin can substitute in the mid game and present a real threat when Samut is chilling in the command zone. Balin especially, 2 and white for a 3/3 legendary creature Cat Knight. Has first strike innately, and Balin Wandering Knight has double strike as long as 2 or more equipment are attached to it. And it has 1 and a white, attach all equipment you control to Balin, so you can do that at instant speed. It also represents a kind of a weird combat trick. If you swing in and people go to block it, they never know if you're going to suck all your equipment onto Balin. Aya color identity, and with her stats and abilities and keywords, she's really wide open and is an older commander that you should definitely check out. Alright, let's talk about one of my favorite older commanders. This is one of the first decks I ever built, and I annoyed my friends endlessly with it. Jaleba, Nephalia Scourge. 1 blue, black, and a red. For a legendary creature, Vampire Wizard, 1/3. Flying. Whenever Jaleba, Nephalia Scourge enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top X cards of their library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast Jaleba. Whenever Jaleba attacks, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among cards exiled with Jaleba without paying its mana cost. It seems like they were playing with cost as a design element, knowing she would be getting removed and coming back from the command zone more powerful than ever. Jaleba is a vampire wizard from Innistrad, Nephalia region. She just torments everybody, that's her lore. She's descended from Runo Stromkirk, but she doesn't like hanging out with her dad at the beach, I guess. This is a lot of fun, if not a bit fiddly. She needs 3 things: haste, big instants and sorceries, and a smidgen of top deck manipulation. We also have our classic haste enablers like Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves, but also we could include cards like Mark of Fury and Rabbit Battery, fresh out of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. This is necessarily a very interactive deck that can afford to play big splashy spells. Cards like In Garruk's Wake, Worst Fears can really hamper an opponent's day. You have access to some of the best in these colors. Worst Fears is 7 and a black for a sorcery. You control target player during that player's next turn. Exile Worst Fears. This is a really mean card, Mindslaver type effect, and doesn't really have a home in a lot of decks. The only problem with a card like this is that it has a hard time closing out games. I would recommend including a few combos or massive token generators like Army of the Damned. Permanent theft effects like Blatant Thievery work great as well. You could also lean into playing your opponent's spells with cards like Fevered Suspicion and Spell Twine. Take the best out of your graveyard and your opponent's graveyard and just go to town, man. So Jaleba is a wizard, so Harmonic Prodigy would double her enter the battlefield effects and her attack trigger. Harmonic Prodigy is a great card out of Modern Horizons 2. It's 1 and a red. For a creature, human wizard, 1/3. It has prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until the end of turn. That's great. But if an ability of a shaman or another wizard you control triggers, that ability triggers an additional time. Suspend cards act interestingly with Jaleba's second ability, the attack trigger, so you don't have to wait for cards like Inevitable Betrayal and Wheel of Fate. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of good suspend instant or sorcery cards, but these two are probably two of the best. Jaleba, much like her character, can be a reviled and hated commander because you're exiling cards every time you play her. This can lead to a lot of record keeping for your opponents because each time she comes in, it's a new stack of cards, which is going to make all your opponents hate you. But if you're looking for an awesome vintage spellslinger commander, she's a vampire, she's a wizard, she reminds me a little bit of my ex-wife, you know what I'm saying? You can try building a Jaleba deck. It's getting the balance of big spells to castable spells can be a real challenge, but it's a really cool deck to try and build. Varela of the Hull Clade. He's a man, he's a fish. He's kind of a heroic character in War of the Spark. I like this guy. He kind of looks like a statue though. I don't know why he's so shiny. Alright, Varela of the Hull Clade. 1 a green and a blue for a legendary creature, human merfolk, 1/4. Green, blue, and tap, double the number of each kind of counter on target artifact, creature, or land. This is an awesome commander, and I remember going through and finding artifacts with counters on it. It was kind of a fun little searching experience. And in the end, I ended up building a deck that was kind of a hybrid with these weird win conditions and +1/+1 counters, hydras that I could make huge, like Colonian Hydra and things like that. But let's take a look. Oh yeah, here we go. This guy has a lot of real hidden potential, mostly centered around some weird old cards like Magistrate Scepter and Eternity Vessel. Magistrate Scepter is a 3-cost artifact. It has 4 and tap, put a charge counter on Magistrate Scepter, and then tap, remove 3 charge counters from Magistrate Scepter, take an extra turn after this one. You can get infinite turns with the Scepter, and if you do, you're pretty much all set for the rest of the game. Eternity Vessel is a really cool card as well. It costs 6. Eternity Vessel enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it, where X is your life total. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may have your life total become the number of charge counters on Eternity Vessel. So basically, if you tap double the amount of counters with Varela, you can double your life total, put a land onto the battlefield, and you can just keep doing that. Your opponents will eventually realize that they have to take you out some other way than to bring your life to 0. So with Varela, you can get some truly massive hydras. Cards like Colonian Hydra, Primordial Hydra. Varela plays well with charge counters and proliferate effects as well. This deck is great for untappers like Kiyora's Follower and Freed from the Real. Freed from the Real is one of those cards that accidentally goes infinite with a ham sandwich. This was really a great deck for Illusionist Bracers as well as Thousand Year Elixir. Illusionist Bracers 2 for an artifact equipment. Whenever an ability of an equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy, equipped for 3. This is a true classic card and is sitting around $10 as we speak. I had back in the day was mostly a +1/+1 counters deck. There were a lot of Hydras and Forgotten Ancient. The Ozolith would be a natural fit to go here. I think I just said Ozolith, but I meant Ozolith. There are a ton of newer cards I'd try in a deck like this. Tanazir Quandrix and Vorinclex would be awesome in a counter-based deck with some of the more suspect win conditions. Speaking of which, we have Darksteel Reactor and Strixhaven Stadium. Darksteel Reactor is 4 for an artifact. Darksteel Reactor is indestructible. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on Darksteel Reactor. When Darksteel Reactor has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So combined with some of our untappers, this can happen surprisingly fast and catch your opponents off guard. Probably only one time though. In any case, Varela was a very janky, lower powered deck, which dirtled around quite a bit. The whole thing was you try to get Magistrate Scepter out there for infinite turns or get 20 counters on Darksteel Reactor. It was still a fun deck and reminds me of kind of the Halcyon days of Commander for me. I really want to thank you guys for checking out my videos. These are a lot of fun for me to make. So leave a comment, like, and subscribe, all that fun stuff. I love you guys. I love you all. I appreciate it, each and every one of you, but not as much as I love Jaleba. This is going to be Nicky G from Better Commander, signing off.